a plan. We had a plan at noon on Wednesdays. I joined my buddy Adam Wilson from All Things Sports Network, and we talk often about minor sports, kind of how we see it, what we see as the kind of the whatever's trending that week or whatever it is that we want to chat about. Adam's studio, where we usually do the work out of, or he calls in to me and we connect. He had a lightning event, I think. At any rate, his computer's down. So here I go. First time, I think, on my own this morning, where it was just me. So if you're joining, and I hope a handful of people join. Um, let's see how I do. All I can do is my best. So yeah, so today it's just you and me. It's my computer. There's Adam's not here, so no host, um, no questions. It's just me. This camera that I have, my computer, and you, and you. Uh, How do I start then? I have a confession to make. I love sports. I love youth sports, especially. I love hockey. I love baseball. Um, I believe that teammates should be able to uh, count on one another. I believe the coaches set standards. I believe that um, families and parents play a huge role and are sometimes left behind, especially in the youth sport movement that we have today. I would love to see things get a little bit better between coaches and parents. I would love to see the minor sports and minor hockey organizations start to pay attention to who really is their paying customer, and that's the parents. Respect their time and respect the fact that outside of baseball, soccer, and hockey, I think are probably the biggest culprits. But weigh in, people. Feel free, please weigh in terms of demanding all of the players' time, therefore the parents and the kids as well. Well, I've spent a big part of my life in arenas on baseball diamonds, golf courses, gyms. Um, so I'm not standing outside youth sport here and necessarily throwing rocks, and I don't want my opinions to be seen as negative. I don't want to be seen as the guy that just throws rocks. My intention in my life, and I think in many parents and grandparents' lives, leaders' lives for sure, are always looking at what is the product and how can I make it better. So I look at youth sports today as a product because it truly is. I mean, I've read figures of between 17 and $34 billion annually are spent just on youth sports in the United States. So let's assume 10% of that. That's a big number here in Canada. And again, I go back to the associations. I'll start, right. And I don't know if it's the OBAs and the OMHAs that we have to look at. I think it's the local associations that need to start to get together and just be respectful a little bit of family time as well as the sports that they're trying to build. Anyway, um, look, I uh, I founded a movement really, H squared athletes, in memory of my son who passed 9 years ago from suicide. And in its simplest form, in the simplest version, for the last couple of years, maybe 8, 9 events now, ranging anywhere from 1 day up to 8 weeks, 12 weeks. Um, I think we've done a pretty good job at helping kids feel good about themselves through sport. And, that all starts with movement. And this isn't necessarily the way we've laid it out, isn't after they make a team, because I don't coach teams anymore. This is, it's not after some adult that says they're talented enough. It's just kids getting together and learning how to move before they learn how to move specifically for their sport. It sounds like a simple mission to do that. Essentially, what we do is movement comes first, and then confidence grows from there. And like it sounds simple, but today in modern sport, whether you're living in Canada, Molesworth, Ontario, home of Paul McIntosh, second round draft choice to the Buffalo Sabres, I want to say 75, or you're living in Toronto and your kid's going to be the next greatest thing. It doesn't really matter, because hockey today begins in March. It can begin in August and it run until March or April. And then some of these club teams and association teams, they'll give you a couple 3 weeks off. Then you do your tryouts. And then they say, well, let's kind of get together starting around the 1st of August and start working things out. Well, the kids are playing baseball, or they're playing soccer, or they're playing hockey, or they're playing, a summer sport. My pet peeve in today's world isn't so much an argument whether the kids are multi-sport athletes. It's respecting the fact that there are seasons. Just like there's a winter season, a spring season, a summer season, a fall season. There's a hockey season. There's a soccer, baseball, golf, all combined season. There's a football season. There's a field lacrosse season. There's a box lacrosse season. And they all happen during different seasons of the actual year. This push to drive kids to overlap between sports is not something that I can get in behind. I realize that every program has a development plan, and every coach has a reason for doing what they're doing. And opportunity sounds like it's available through these elongated seasons. But I have to ask you this, how can an exhibition game on the August 19th with a team that is still fighting for, let's say, their league, or a berth into the All-Ontario in baseball or soccer, or the hockey player is a big golfer and there's still 3 tournaments to go. How can it possibly be beneficial in March that we've had that hockey player on the ice playing an exhibition game on the 19th of August? And people will say, well, it's not mandatory. Well, it's not mandatory, but we teach these kids that they're part of a team, and you do what the team does, and they feel the pressure. They feel the pressure to play in their current season for their current baseball teams. And at the same time, as soon as hockey comes online, they feel the pressure to be there for their hockey playing friends and teammates as well. So amongst the many, many good things that sports can be, and the many, many good things that minor sport coaches and associations can do, now we're kind of mixing in some pressure, maybe that doesn't have to be there. Certainly, you know, there's levels, there's different levels of players, different levels of competition. For the purposes of this conversation, I'm kind of looking at the kind of double A and down. You know, the AAA family, the battle-hardened AAA player, and coaches and parents. Well, you know, they've kind of been there, done that. They've seen it. It's a commitment. It becomes part of the DNA of the family. Um, you know, I'm not going to necessarily say I agree with it, but definitely I'm going to give a pass to that. So the question today: when does great opportunity provided by great local minor sports associations and organizations and all of the volunteer people that go into making successful associations, all the coaches, the managers, the parents that fund everything? Again, the parent is the customer, the parents that fund everything. When does opportunity become an obligation? And when does that obligation become a weight on the children? Yes, the children that are playing for these different associations. I'm not here to blame parents or coaches, associations. Listen, every parent I've ever met is doing the right thing, trying to do the right thing for their child. The majority of every coach that I've ever met in minor sports they care deeply about teams, their players, the parents. They care deeply about, you know, what they're putting on the field or the ice, or how they're communicating with their team, their athletes, their kids. The associations are run by, you know, for the most part, I think associations are run by volunteers. I think it's possible that larger associations have paid directors. And those directors, they can only be as good as the association itself, or the board of governors or directors, executive. Um, but again, good people, good people. Um, you know, those same good people can have a great program, but they have to continue to build that program. They have to constantly, if I'm, it's an opinion. I've never sat on a board. I don't know the comings and goings of an association. I know it's got to be stressful. There's certain positions on a minor sports executive that I think takes just wonderful, wonderful people that must be very patient. But you know, all things good um, can add up to problems as well. So look, good people can be part of an unhealthy system. Let's get back to it. Today, when does um, when does opportunity created by all of these good people and all of these wonderful organizations, when does that become an obligation? And when does that obligation become unhealthy for athletes? Um, I'm going to call it the multi-sport collision. It's like you know what? It truly is. It's like a train wreck, a car accident. You're 12, you love hockey, you love baseball, you love playing golf with your buddies. You play soccer during the school year, you play some volleyball, you love volleyball. Who doesn't love volleyball? Volleyball, basketball, you love it. Um, hockey evaluations happen in the spring, just as you're kicking off your baseball season. You make the team, and then just as you're ramping up for the playoffs or the OBAs, your hockey coach comes in and says, hey, we're going to have a few conditioning skates. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have a couple of exhibition games. Now let's place the parents in the middle. The parents are like, Jesus, let's get through baseball here first before we add another sport. And truly, I don't know what percentage, but there's a percentage of parents out there that see it that way. I certainly know that I would. But the kid feels like, well, my team needs me now. The parents feel like the coach needs them to be there. And then there's the fear of retribution. Well, if I don't show up and I don't show like I'm interested, even though it's probably for good reason that my kid's going to miss, this skate because, they've had 5 nights of baseball. Yeah, they've got that night off, but I want my family. I want my kid to be around my family. This all brings. We can bring this all back to, just good, decent, common respect. One sport respecting the other. The family is then caught. I think we end up. And by the way, I'm sure I've been guilty of this in the past. So this is an old guy looking back over my life, and I'm sure that I've had families, in the baseball as hockey was coming offline, and in hockey as baseball was coming offline, where they're doing their very best, trying not to disappoint me, or the team. So let's go through a cycle here. Winter arrives, hockey's in full season. Baseball sends an email that indoor development for pitchers and catchers starts in November. And by the way, if you want to do a little bit of batting, you can come out at the same time. There's this pressure. Every parent wants to give their child the best advantage, give their child an edge. Every parent wants to give their child an edge, so they don't want to fall behind. Spring arrives. Hockey playoffs stretch late. Baseball ramps up. And soccer has already offered an academy session. By summer, the child's been coached, evaluated, corrected, scheduled, driven for 11 straight months. If we go all the way back to May, when they first tried out for hockey, they've gone through different seasons, and we're all the way for 11 consecutive months. The child and their parents have had the enviable, in many cases, pressure of having to meet deadlines, be to games on time, pay lots of money, hundreds, well into the thousands. And we call that opportunity because every invitation is perceived as a positive label. It's perceived as a stepping stone to whatever sort of goal or vision people have of their kids. They're being developed, they're being prepared. We use that word elite. It's a pathway, it's structure, it keeps the kids off the streets. We have optional skates, we've got identification camps, off-season academies, H squared. But the player hears the sentence, the underneath part of the underbelly of what that sentence is. If I don't go, I might lose my place. If I don't go, I might lose my place. Years ago, you often heard of a player that played through an injury, and it was an injury. He or she didn't tell anybody about, because they didn't want to lose their place. Fear of missing out or losing place is not a healthy way to live. And I feel bad for those parents and the players that feel the pressure and the obligation to meet their commitment 100% of the time, or as close to 100% of the time as possible. Optional, it's not simply a word. Optional is an experience. You can choose your own experiences. So if a child misses an optional session, as an example, and then sees their ice time, their position on the team, maybe a first line center becomes a third line right winger, and I've seen that. That's not optional. That word's not optional. Optional is an experience. It's a chosen experience. So if we're going to put out there that optional, that practices are truly optional, and I will say this, in most cases, in many, many, many cases, it is optional. Some cases you see out there are better than others. But if optional really starts to become something more than optional, and if there's an expectation that the child is there, then let's just be upfront about that. And then that bleeds into the whole argument of, well, at what point do you become a single sport athlete? Well, I'm not going to get into that argument. To me, that's a personal decision that's made between the athlete and his parents. There are benefits of being single sport athletes. There's negatives to it. There's positives to being a multi-sport athlete, and there's negatives to being a multi-sport athlete. I wouldn't recommend becoming a single sport athlete at 7. I don't think I'd recommend becoming a single sport athlete until after puberty, male or female. But again, I'm not going to get into that. I'm not gonna get into that. That's just a mucky, dirty area that I'm not prepared to get to go down that path. However, opportunity, let's get back to opportunity. Opportunity says something like, goes something along these lines. Here's something that's available to you, no strings attached. We have a great program. We've got wonderful coaches. Our financial impact on the family is less than most. That's opportunity. When optional comes in, and if it starts to lean more towards prove your commitment or risk losing what you've earned, now we're talking about what an obligation is. Development matters, repetition matters, attendance matters. But development is not simply the number of organized hours or events or games or practices that the parents can stack their kids into in a year. Pet peeve of mine. I watch practices. I go to practices. If sports were just practices, I'd be a happy guy. I'm not so sure we're doing a great job at practices. Therefore, I'm not so sure that the development is where it could be. To be a successful leader in youth sports, I think, starts at one's commitment to development. We build at H Squared, Brett's Boys, to the extent that we can, because we're just a quick 4, 6, 8 week shot. We try to build our teams and athletes from the ground up. We literally believe that we teach movement first, and then we teach sport-specific movement, but that movement starts at our feet. So what happens if the child gets injured? Loses his place, maybe. He or she comes back off injury, and we're trying to get them back to maybe where they were. But maybe while that time was spent injured, other players were able to move ahead, especially in the younger ages. 2-3 months of an injury is kind of a big deal. And this is where, again, the opportunity is to develop based on the cards that were dealt during that season. Obligation, the child will feel the obligation if they feel like they're being driven hard to come back from injury and get back to the exact spot that they used to be. How am I doing so far? I am I'm jumping around a little bit. I've been doing a lot of reading, and so these are notes. This is scientific notes. I ask myself constantly, what is my team telling me? What are the kids telling me? The players telling me? The assistant coaches, what are they telling me? Our managers, what are the parents telling me? And not all of it's in writing. Some of it's verbal. Not all of it's verbal. Some of it's just that feeling you get when you walk into the lobby. In 2025, Jumpstart State of Play youth, they did a survey of roughly 1,000 Canadian youth. So I'm going to do some reading here. 60% were classified as very active. 81% were multi-sport participants. 60% said sport helped them make friends. 36% said sport helped them build a stronger belief in themselves. Those numbers describe what sport can be at its very best. Let me go back to those numbers. These numbers, they're not as big as I thought they would be. Only 60% said sport helped them make friends. Culture, coaches, associations, 60%, only 6 in 10 kids said that playing sport helped them make friends. That's a slippery slope. I hope it doesn't get down to 4 or worse. When I look at that number, I say, let's look at the culture. What's happening in that dressing room? What level is this at? Is this at the house league level, the rec league, the local league? 80% of the people that are participating, roughly 70 to 80%, have to be, and I don't know this factually, playing in those leagues. Only 36% said 36% said sport helped them build a stronger belief in themselves. Only 36%. Culture. Those numbers describe what sport can be at its very best, according to these articles, according to the result of the survey. The same survey found that costs were the #1 barrier, named by 48% of the respondents. 50% of our athletes' families say that the #1 barrier to sport is cost. Family members provided 81% of the population. Now, I don't think that's going to change. I don't know how to fix that one. So, but let's think about that. We often describe sport access as a registration problem. You know, it's also a ride problem. It's a ride problem I'm finding in the bigger centers. It was never a ride problem where I grew up, because we all played, you know, our own kind of neighborhoods, our own little towns. We played together. Parents drove other kids. Those parents that were fortunate enough where maybe the mom was home, she did a lot of the driving to the arenas, to the diamonds, to the golf courses, to the tournaments, so that those parents that were working could catch up and maybe did a lot of the driving home. We have a transportation problem. Why is that? I don't know. Could it be because we've opened borders? "81% of the respondents said transportation was a problem. 50% said it's money. That was shocking to me. Let me go back. The closer geographical area that we draw our players from, the more resources we have for our team. The better opportunity we have for one family to drive another family odd weeks of the year, and then vice versa. And what does that build? Culture. It builds culture. A brilliant program that requires 3 hours to drive on a Tuesday is not accessible to many families. I experienced that. Hour and a half, an hour and a half to St. Mary's. Watch a doubleheader, an hour and a half home. And I'm the grandfather. I look at the makeup of local AA and AAA teams. Kids are being brought in from everywhere. But you get 6 from, say, Halton Hills, and we lose 3 to Waterloo and 3 to Cambridge. I don't get it. I don't get this pressure that's being put on onto the kids' shoulders. Essentially what we're saying is our kids aren't good enough, so we're going to go and we're going to draw from other places for the same team. I'm going to circle all the way back to this, because open borders, I believe, is helping rural. So I'm speaking right now of urban centers. If your program is not up to speed, it's not the kids. It's not the kids. And now when we look at what sport is supposed to be, we're just putting more and more pressure on coaches to develop a culture. It's hard, man. How do you develop a culture when your team is coming from all over the place? It's frustrating to me. So again, you might have a brilliant program. You might be the greatest coach in the world, but you're not accessible, it says here, to up to 81% of the people because of travel, and about 48% of the people because of the demands of travel, and 48% because of the financial demands. So Jumpstart also found that youth that are active 7 days a week were nearly 3 times as likely as youth active 1 day a week to give the highest possible rating to the sense of life that is worthwhile. I'm going to say, I'll read this again. Jumpstart also found that youth active 7 days a week were nearly 3 times as likely as youth active only 1 day a week to give the highest possible rating to the sense that life is worthwhile. Now, you can look at me and say, holy hell, yeah, see, there's your point. It's okay. Let's run 7 days a week. Let's overlap. Look, That doesn't mean that we need to hear 7 active days. So that's therefore book 7 active events split between 2 active sports on the rollover, or 7 active practices. We've missed the point. Uh, uh, if that is the response, I think we've missed the point. Um, because guess what? Jumpstart goes on to say, this is the conclusion. This is the definition of active. Activity can be walking the dog. You can do that with your family. Shooting baskets, you can do that with your brothers and sisters. Skating around with your buddies that aren't playing on the AAA team, or that you're a house league player skating with your best friend that does play on the AAA team outdoor. What's wrong with playing a little bit of road hockey? That's active. Why not just go out and throw a ball with your friend? That's what it says right here. Movement, and I know this to be true through our experience with H-squared athletes, H2G, Brett's boys. Movement is larger than organized sport. Movement in the soul of the child is larger than organized sport. In the fall of 2025, MLSE Foundation and the University of Toronto Centre for Sport Policy Studies, they surveyed about 12,098 Ontario youth. Their Change the Game work examined access, engagement, equity, safety, and belonging, along with bullying, hazing, body image, sports culture, and well-being. So I wanna preface this by saying, anytime that I'm looking at research like this, I want to kind of look at it through my own lens, the lens of what's called experience. Some might call it, in some cases, it was hard knocks. In other cases, it was a beautiful experience. It was kind of anything in between. It was success. It was failure. Some real happiness, and a little bit of sadness that has gone on through almost 6 decades this year of minor sports. Beginning, I skated. The first year I skated, I was 4 years old. So when I look at research, I need to look at it through my lens. Because not every concern I have that I've expressed and seemingly continue to express about how things are happening in our youth sports today are big deals, but some of them are. Or if you take all the little problems that I'm having right now with youth sport, they add up to some pretty big problems. I'm not seeing a happy culture. I have to step away and look after my dog. There we go. So I believe that, we can go ahead and build the best drill plans. We can build the best season plans. We can put a whole lot of things down on paper, and we can get along just fine with theory. But that's what we'll get along just fine. We can have excellent facilities. We can have turf. We can have indoor turf, outdoor turf. beautiful diamonds, aesthetically pleasing opportunities to play volleyball, basketball, soccer. But two things can be true, because we can still have bullying. We can still have a scenario where some players are actually intimidated to show up and play. And we're not going to stop that. It's going to happen. Let's just, maybe it happens less and less. Again, it goes back to culture. It goes back to, play with your neighborhood buddies. Finding a way to play within your neighborhood. That's one thing. I'm sure there's many others. My small mind says, drop the pebble, hits the pond. That first ring that goes out from the pebble, that's my core. Those are my people. That's my center. We can stand there and preach confidence, right? By using a child's body as an example, like a project to be judged. One of the things that I think we need to get away from is not get away from. I think what we need to, coaches especially, associations, when you're coaching a one player that's 6'6" with long legs, that kid has to get coached differently than the kid that's 5'9" with shorter legs. Size doesn't only affect performance, it affects personality just a little bit. I was at a game recently, and there's a kid, smaller, like shorter kid, stocky, and he had that chip on his shoulder because he had to play with that chip on his shoulder in order to play with his team that were, for the most part, 6-footers. Those kids get coached differently, but that's all part of the culture as well. So belonging, feeling a sense of belonging is also a performance indicator of how successful an association or a coach is. It goes on to say here that a child who feels watched for weaknesses protects themselves. They play tight. They hide pain. They avoid mistakes, and eventually some walk away. One child wants a national pathway. I know we've got that in our family. Another child just wants. I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Another child wants to play house league with their friends. But going back to 7 days a week, their best friend might be the kid that wants the national pathway. Nothing wrong with staying active by going out and playing a little touch football with your friend that's chasing the national dream and a whole bunch of other schoolmates. That's active. No place in the universe does it say that we're responsible to keep the kids moving all the time through structured and paid for sports. Confidence first coaching is soft. Confidence first coaching is kind of setting the player up to receive some hard coaching without believing that coach, I'm not going to say is a bad person, but that coach is, So in other words, fear-based coaching, soft with kids, very soft. Safety is what allows accountability. If I feel safe, and I know I had great coaches, Gordy Heimers, Del Graham, Deke Nin, Murray Bender, Ken Hodgkinson, my father, Louis, Davey Worth, and others. They didn't coach through fear. We were accountable to a system that they taught us. And they made all of us feel like we belonged. You do that, if we do that in sport today, if that becomes our focus, you're going to have a whole bunch of children that are out there. They're prepared to risk failure on the field and off. You have to be prepared to lose. That's one of the greatest things in sports. That's why this idea that everybody gets a medal, that's not fair. I don't see the academic system saying that I got to get a 100 just because I showed up. Training, more training is not development. I would preface this next part, and this is actually, we'll close off with this. Let's move, I guess, from culture to the body and the brain. I'd rather see a kid out there taking an hour to make 50 great swings of the bat, 75 great shots, 100 great shots, rather than take 100 swings half-assed at a bat, having the ball in the perfect place, or 200 shots. And there's been some studies on this. In 2025, the Public Health Agency of Canada study examined 10,400 Canadian adolescents between 12 and 17. The group reporting 14 or more hours of outdoor activity each week had better adjusted of outdoor activity, movement each week had better adjusted odds of positive mental health, high life satisfaction, and happiness than adolescents reporting no outdoor activity had. We don't play hockey outdoors. In the peak of the hockey season, a house league player is probably indoors at the arena 4 hours a week. A AAA or AA hockey player can be indoors at the arena 12, 15 hours a week. What are we producing? Only 3% reported 14 or more outdoor hours each week. Only 3%. While 36% reported none. No outdoors. So I don't think it proves that outdoor activity curbs like anxiety and depression inside of kids. And let me go all the way back. I would rather that 20 hours on the ice indoors than none. And I don't think that it's necessarily the way that society is set up and the way that our sports are set up and our passions and our loves for the game. Every kid's not going to be able to spend that 14 hours a week outdoors. It's just impossible. So I take from that, again, through my experience, I just sort of say, get outside as much as you can. I'm going to close up with the parents. I think the most important people in minor sports today are parents. And I want to say to all the parents, the grandparents, the guardians, stepmoms, stepdads, who often maybe, there's dynamics there. Very clearly, I want to say to you, I see you. I'm a huge supporter of parents. You're not weak because that calendar feels impossible. And you're not uncommitted because damn it, you want to have meals at home with your family. Not a failure if you can't drive to games. You can't drive 90 minutes to the next greatest thing. And by the way, some of these elite, they call them leagues, they are elite. And it's a huge commitment. So for those that have made that commitment, are able to make that commitment, I tip my hat, because it really is something special. And I hope that your kids feel that way. And I hope they feel special, because the opportunity is special, and your commitment to get them to that opportunity is very, very special. You know, all of the winter road driving that you do, long distance driving in the summer, late ice, the expense of hotel rooms, the hours that it takes to prepare to go to the hotel room, the cost of registration, of equipment, tournament fees, team fees, special team outings, your commitment to fundraising, to joining in potlucks and helping. I think you still do. I think there's still potlucks. If not, I know the commitment and the financial commitment then to restaurants. Yeah, every association should have a parent award for every parent that's part of that association. I wish that I don't hear from so many parents that they're afraid to speak to the coach because they don't want their kid to lose their status on the team. I wish that wasn't the case. That's not fair. All of this adds up to stuff like driving fatigue, financial pressure, scheduling chaos. It's real. I see it. I see it on your faces. I see you. You know, and the loss of family time, and shame on anybody that, you know, if you've got a weekend off and all of a sudden you just want to squeeze a practice in for development, don't do that. Don't do that. No, you know, just don't do it. Go home to your own family. Respect what the parents have given you, coaches and associations. Respect the parent. They're paying the freight. On top of all of this, there's some guilt because there's this sort of fear of missing out, or this driving factor that I'm not saying all parents, but some parents that I speak to, you know, they feel guilty if they can't find a way to take their kid to the next greatest thing. Again, it goes back to what I said almost an hour ago. Every parent wants to give their kid an edge. Here's some words of wisdom for parents. Providing an opportunity for your child does not mean accepting or seeking every opportunity. Your job is not to build a resume for your kids. As parents, we sign a contract. I heard this, and from actually a psychologist. We sign a contract with the universe to protect our kids. And I think in today's day and age, and we'll leave it at this, maybe the strongest parent sentence that can be made to minor sports is, that sounds like a great idea, a really strong idea, wonderful opportunity, but it's not right for our family today, this week, or this season, whatever that answer is. So, parents, you're doing a great job. You're meeting your commitments. Do your best to protect yourself and your family and your player from feeling like you're obligated. Thank you.